Teen Wolf, An American Werewolf in London, Van Helsing all have a way of portraying werewolves and were successful in their own ways. But behind the troves of movies like this lies one of my favourites, a hidden gem, a cult classic, 2002, Dog Soldiers. Despite in my opinion being one of the most innovative werewolf films of the 21st century, Dog Soldiers was underappreciated at the time of its release. At its core, this is your run-of-the-mill, low-budget horror movie directed by a debutant filmmaker looking to make a name for himself. But once you get into it, this is a well-crafted horror experience that keeps you grounded and spooked the whole time. Despite this, the film suffered from poor distribution and limited marketing, as you often find with movies of this level.
Cheers, mate.
Which just relegated it to a small horror/thriller loving audience rather than the mainstream recognition I think it deserved. I was far too young when I saw this movie for the first time. My dad popped in the DVD while my mum was out, and me, my brother and him sat down watching what would ultimately be an experience that would affect the types of movies I would enjoy for the rest of my life. There's a reason that 15 plus years later, after I first saw this, it sticks out in my mind as a movie that everyone who loves horror/thriller should watch at least once. Definitely have a soft spot for its setting too, being in the Highlands and all. Dog Soldiers wasted no time in getting into the thick of it. The film follows a group of British soldiers on a training mission in the Scottish Highlands who find themselves in a brutal fight for survival against werewolves? It's slightly different, but it reminded me of Aliens, that soldier versus monster dynamic that Hollywood loves. You're introduced to Tommy Cooper, a soldier looking to pass the notoriously difficult SAS selection process, and he's immediately in favour with the whole audience and me for refusing to kill a dog for no reason. Immediately I'm backing this man. Oftentimes some of these low budget films can suffer from not so great acting, which I don't really think Dog Soldiers was affected by. Cooper is played by Kevin McKidd, who most likely knows Tommy Mackenzie from Trainspotting, or for you Greys lovers out there, Dr. Owen Hunt. Sergeant Harry, Sean Pertwee, went on to star in Gotham as Alfred, and for the Brits out there, Darren Moffat bounced around but was on Corrie most recently for about a year or so. One of my favourite parts of this movie is the genuine camaraderie between the soldiers. None of them can be arsed. They're there shooting the shit, and it comes off as actual patter you'd expect to hear from a bunch of lads who are forced to be joined at the hip with nothing better to do. But then the movie switches up really quick, and it turns into an oh fuck kind of feeling that I wasn't actually really prepared for when it started happening. Even though I knew some of them had to go, when the wolves started hunting them, I thought they would all make it out, then the seriousness would kick in. But Bruce's death was a real shocker when it happened, because it wasn't even the wolves who did it. It was an occupational hazard. He ran into a pointed thick brand. Once this happened, I knew we were in for a bit of a ride in a variety of deaths. On the werewolves, I have been watching Twilight, and the complete difference in how they handle werewolves is what made me think of this movie. The usual trope has a person being turned into one, dealing with the morality of it, trying to cure it, trying to hide it. All the usual stuff. No one wants to be a werewolf. The stark difference here is that werewolves are not tortured souls. They're efficient, remorseless predators who just want fresh meat. This unromanticised portrayal, lack of whimsicalness and fantasy elements which are often associated with werewolves, is nowhere to be found. You're watching a group of coordinated hunters taking down their prey one by one, which is an ironic reflection of the soldiers themselves. They become locked in this survival of the fittest battle, and really at points, you genuinely don't know who's going to win this fight. It's a theme that runs through the movie. It feels fresh now, even 20 years later. At this point, it'd be remiss of me not to mention the twist. As an adult, maybe it's more evident of what was going on, especially with the horrors and twists being synonymous with each other. But learning that Ryan was there to capture a werewolf, using the soldiers as bait, I was just as pissed as they were. Then not too long after, discovering that Megan is one of them, I was shocked, man.
Somebody has to get out of this misery. What?
Looking back, maybe there were hints. She was a little bit too eager to rush a random group of soldiers into her truck without knowing who they were or what they wanted. But it did. It genuinely floored me. Hiding the real twist behind the subtle suspicion around Ryan was skillfully done. It felt like a 1-2 punch of finding out that Ryan and Megan were both in on it and the whole time in their own ways. The beauty of films like these is the necessity of practical effects because of the low budget. This time it gave Dog Soldiers a really gritty, quality feel that I don't think CGI can always give you. It's a textbook example of how to make a little go a long way, I guess. With Marshall's careful use of lighting and shadow, enhancing the werewolf's menace, all that classic stuff. It can be a bit of a risk in movies like these when you do eventually offer up your monster, because if it doesn't look good, then you immediately kill the vibe of the movie. These guys, they felt menacing. I got the opportunity to build them up in my head, which is, in my opinion, always the best way to experience fear in these movies. Then when they're actually revealed to you, I was pretty shocked because they looked pretty fucking good. Slightly different again, but Paranormal Activity gets a lot of slack, but the original was the same idea for me. Not getting to see what was causing the chaos was kind of part of the fear factor. The campiness of some of this movie is what seals the deal for me though. The fucking dog playing tug of war with the sergeant's intestines, and then Terry being sick all over Ryan. The silliness was actually like a welcome bit of relief from what was a rather unsettling experience at points. Like Spoon getting in a fist fight with a werewolf is so ridiculous, but I was all in. I want him to win that fight so bad. It's also given me an unreasonable fear of camping, which, when you live in the Scottish Highlands and you actually like the outdoors and touching grass, I always have this little thought in the back of my head. I wonder what if... Look, despite not causing waves throughout the industry after release, Dog Soldiers has deservedly become a cult classic. This is a classic low-budget horror film that drips of passion. You can tell how much of a fan Neil Marshall is of the genre and the genuine commitment the actors had to making this a good movie. The movie goes down as one that my dad let me and my brother watch far too young, but also one that I'm so glad he somehow found. At the very least, this is a fun horror to pop in when you want that classic experience, and at its best, it's an excellent survival thriller if you want to feel a sense of dread for 100 minutes. The beauty of cult status is that a great piece of media will always find its audience. I'm glad this one did too.
I think it's all over. It is now.